Hello friends, welcome out to another episode of Andrew Good Camera. Today I'm in Santa Monica on the beach. One of my, it's not my favorite place actually, believe it or not. I don't like sand very much, but it is one of the favorite places of my son, Noah, and I am out on a little father and son's adventure with him. As you might know, Danae and I take turns taking our children out one at a time and having some fun experiences and adventures with them. So I'm out with Noah this time. We took a road trip to California to do some fun and exciting things, and one of those things includes the beach here. But while I'm here chilling on the beach, letting my son live his best life, I'm gonna record a video, and the topic of today's video is, as you may or may not know, I've moved from Fuji as my primary daily driver for photography and videography to Canon, but the reason isn't as important as in today's video as the differences, and I've really been keenly aware as I've kind of made that switch. I still shoot Fuji a little bit, but mostly Canon again. Of course, Danae and I started shooting Canon years ago when we started our professional photography, portrait photography business, moved to Fuji, and now I'm back onto Canon. So I have a lot of experience between the two platforms, moving between them. You may or may not know, I am a UI, UX designer full-time, or I was. I'm a content creator full-time now, but so I've spent a lot of time analyzing, designing, and thinking about testing interfaces. So I'm really aware of the differences between the Fuji and the Canon experience, the overall shooting experience, who they're designed for, who benefits most from them, and that's the purpose of this video really, is to compare and contrast and really help anyone who's deciding between the two platforms get a better idea of which one's going to fulfill your needs as a photographer and videographer more long term. So we'll go into that, but in between each point, as I often do, because I don't like just blah-blah-blahing the whole time at you, and the art and the experience of shooting is as important as these thoughts. I will intersperse each point with a photo that I got yesterday on our road trip. We took the scenic route, Route 66 to be more specific, largely on our way from southern Utah where we live out here to Santa Monica. And on the way just got a lot of the type of photography that you know that I love, which is the rural decay, rural architecture and landscape, and dystopian that I love to get, specifically targeting that 65:24 panoramic aspect ratio as I continue to work on the book that I will be publishing at some point. So let's go to the first shot that I took on our drive here yesterday, and then we'll talk about these cameras. If you want to use the chapter markers below, feel free, but I hope that you enjoy the whole video, so let's get into it.
These streets don't take me nowhere good. I'd stop right now and turn around if I could. But time it marches forward, yeah, time it marches on. No, I can't stay. No, I can't stay. Well, you know what they say, everything fades. Yeah, the sun, the moon, the stars, everything fades.
This scene is very appealing to me. I just don't love this sign right here. Kind of disrupts the dystopian feel of the place. So I need to work the scene a little bit. There's a lot of chaos, but the light's nice. Love this blue truck. Love these, I don't know what you call those. Flying buttresses? I don't know, but we'll figure out a way to shoot it.
But life is getting cold. I'm growing gray and old. No,
Alright, so for the first point I want to make is that I am shooting right now. I'm filming this on the R6 Mark II, and that is the camera I used on the whole journey yesterday. Of course, I've shot with Fuji for, I don't know, 6 years prior to that, so if you want examples of shooting with those devices, I've got a huge library of videos that you can refer to, and lots of experience. But this journey will be focused on the R6 or the photos that are R6 too. And the first major difference that is important to talk about is the sensor size, obviously. And when I talk about Fuji, I'm mainly talking about the Fuji X platform, not GFX. There's pretty substantial differences between those two platforms. And the price point of kind of the R6 Mark II or below that, kind of the entry points into Canon versus the entry points into Fuji, which would be the Fuji X-T5 or the X-H2 or some of the older ones if you want to buy used, which we'll talk about, or some of the other devices, the smaller Fuji and less expensive Fuji devices, which there are a plethora of very good devices. We're not talking high-end for this video because I'm assuming a lot of you are sort of new to that. So when we talk about the differences between the EOS R6 Mark II, comparable in cost to like the X-T5, X-H2 on Fuji, we have a sensor size difference, and that's very important to note. The sensor in the Canon devices are full frame, unless you're going down to the Rebel or some of those smaller devices, which I don't know as much about. I know some of those are what we call APS-C, which is smaller than full frame. I'm assuming that those of you interested in Canon are looking at the full frame devices, and I'd recommend you look there first if you're looking at those price points, comparable again to the Fuji X-T5 and whatnot. So the sensor size is, a lot of people will make a bigger deal out of that than I think they need to. You know, we're talking about 1.5 times increase, right, from the Canon over the Fuji, but that's different than like pixel density. There's a lot of cameras all have different pixel densities, how many megapixels you get on the camera. So for instance, like the X-T4, I can't remember, 20 something I'll put on the screen. X-T5 you get a little bit more. X-H2, you know, there's different pixel density, which is similar, I believe, and again I'll put this on the screen because I don't remember them offhand. Similar to the Canon EOS R6 Mark II. So the amount of pixels you're getting, the file sizes are actually similar on these devices. But because the sensor is larger, that will change the way that the image appears. What it means in practical terms for a lot of portrait photographers and those who care about this is you'll get a lot more shallow depth of field when you're shooting at the lower aperture mark. So if you're going to get a 50mm 1.2 on Canon, for instance, and you're comparing that to like the 33 1.2 Fuji, or what is it? Yeah, I think it's a 1.2. It's been a while. You're still going to have more shallow depth of field on the Canon because there's a larger sensor, and so that provides shallower depth of field. And I don't think that's a big deal. I think it's silly how much people focus on that, honestly. And I've been a portrait photographer. You also get better access to light though, and that is not as insubstantial. I think for me, that's a little bit more interesting, that you can shoot in lower light with a larger sensor in general. All of these things are factors. Personally, I wouldn't make a buying decision on sensor size alone. Having said that, I have enjoyed having full frame again. It's been, I like it a little bit more in general than I do the APS-C, but that's just one factor and not the most important factor. The only reason I'm bringing it up is as we get into the next point, but before I do that, let's cut to another photo. I love this shot, this building. However, it's in shadow. There's too much shadow on the front of the building. The sun is directly overhead. It's not a shot that I would keep, but I'll take it and brighten up the shadowed area. Mostly just to remember, so I can come back here with better light. But yeah, when the light is closer to the horizon, during the winter, for instance, any time of day, really, this would probably be in direct sunlight. So but for this time of year, it's not gonna work. All right, so the next point, having to do with sensor size, it relates to it in some way, is your upgrade path. When you're shooting in Fuji X-Land, you usually are gonna buy maybe an older model and a more affordable lens to start out with. You might do that in Canon land as well. Maybe you'll start with the R6 Mark I and get used and a more affordable lens like we bought. When I switched, the first lens I got was a 50mm 1.8, which is an awesome lens. That mirrorless lens. Someone's talking to my kids, so just gotta make sure they're not a creeper. What was she saying?
She said there's dolphins out there, and I saw them.
There's dolphins out there?
Yeah, I saw them. There's dolphins out there.
Wow! Oh, I see them! All the wonders of the beach. Where were we? Upgrade path. You start out with more affordable stuff, right? But the idea is, if you get more into photography, especially if you can make money for you and pay for itself, you're going to slowly increase, probably, if you're the average Western consumer, you're eventually going to want to have the best of the best. And I don't think you need to do that to take amazing photos at all. But if you want to upgrade, if you want to shoot professionally, let's say you do sports or other things or landscape and you want to take it very seriously, you want the absolute best and you don't want to have any trade-offs, the potential that you'll get out of Canon as far as technology is much higher than what you'll get out of a Fuji device, at least the Fuji X. Now you can jump from Fuji X, which is the APS-C, it's smaller sensor size like I said. Everything is designed for that format. While Fuji does have the GFX format, unfortunately it's a separate system. So there's no like leapfrogging technology like you can with Canon. So with Canon, you could buy like we did, a Canon EOS R6 Mark II with a 50mm 1.8 lens, and then what I'm shooting on here, which is the 24-105 f4L, right, that zoom lens. So we got two pretty good lenses. They're not the best by any stretch of the imagination. Canon makes some amazing lenses, and these are nice, but there are better. So next we'll upgrade that lens choice, and then eventually we can probably get into maybe an R5, right? And you kind of leapfrog the technology and increase it. So the R5 is going to give us more megapixels, you know, 8K if we wanted it for some reason, shooting capability for video. A lot of other capabilities, that larger memory card format, right? There's a lot of advantages as a professional photographer to moving up to the R5 and then leapfrogging, let's say, to the, what is that, the 25-70 f2, which is an astounding lens, very expensive. With Fuji X, you bump up to the technology pretty quick in that upgrade path. It'll never be able to compete with Canon on once you bump up to that high end as far as megapixels, as far as technology, sensor, autofocus. The autofocus capabilities that Canon have far exceed what Fuji has. So it's something to keep in mind if you plan to upgrade. If you don't plan to upgrade ever, then just fine, you know, I got the X100V, I shot with that in Istanbul. I don't know if that video will come out before this one or not, but I was more than happy with just that camera that whole trip. I loved it, and I could actually be pretty happy with just the X100V Fuji, shooting with that for the rest of my life if I had to. I could, no question I could do that. Not professionally, but just for my own satisfaction. This one has a raking light, which is a little better than the last one. It'll work. Good panoramic shot of a old building. Yeah, I kind of like it. right, so the next point, and this one contrasts with upgrade path, because as you upgrade, quote unquote, and if I were to upgrade from Fuji X and get into the GFX system with Fuji, it's the same thing happens with getting to the Canon R5 or higher, and the more powerful lenses, the kit gets bigger and bigger, and your footprint is larger and larger as a photographer. Everything weighs more, you have to pack more. It's not as simple. And that's actually the reason we shot with Fuji for as long as we did. Honestly, the number one reason we switched was size. We wanted compact because both of it, Danae has back and arm and shoulder issues, and having those big, we used to shoot with 5D Mark IIs, Canon DSLRs, and those things are beasts. And you know, during those long shoots, she was really struggling. So I got the XT2, and I said, try this, and let's see if that helps. And it did. It helped a ton, having small form factor, and we really felt like it still shot amazing photos. So we made this switch, you know, 6 years ago or whatever it was. And she still shoots a lot with the X100V for that reason, because it's just a small device. But Canon's, you know, it's a tank. It is a Canon. These, especially the nicer optics, they're heavier, and they're bigger. And packing them around isn't always very fun, especially if you are a hobbyist. I've said this so many times, and I fundamentally believe that the size of your camera is inversely proportional to how often you have it with you at those times that you want it there. And depending on what kind of photographer you are, if you're kind of a lifestyle documentary style photographer like I am, not having your camera there is a bummer all the time. And I don't take this Canon with me nearly as much as I take the X100V, the Fuji, or a smaller Fuji device. And that's just the reality. And so what it means is a lot of you people who are going to invest in a large Canon body, you're probably going to end up taking the lifestyle, the documentary style photos on your phone more often than you thought you would, because it's just not practical to have this with you all the time. It can become cumbersome. So keep that in mind. Small, and if you're a street photographer as well, I don't care who you are, there are probably a few street photographers who will claim they don't care, they don't mind having a massive camera with them. We're out on the streets. I think most people do prefer something small. And so, you know, if you're a street photographer, it's a no-brainer. You're gonna shoot with, you know, Ricoh GR2 or a X100V, something Fuji, or something small, a Leica. Yeah, so that's just the reality of camera size. Don't discount that. In many ways, I feel like that's a way bigger deal, depending again on what type of photographer you are. If you're a sports photographer, none of this matters. Wildlife, you gotta go big. You just have to, no choice. But for other types of photographers, I think the size of the camera, don't underestimate how important that is. Don't get yourself locked into a system that you're not gonna use, that's just gonna be in the closet most of the time, because you'll regret that decision. Yet another photo op here on the side of Route 66 with that dappled lighting. I think this will look good. The only challenge is that it kind of slopes down, so I can't go as far back as I would like to get the compression that I like to get. I'm gonna have to get a little closer so that I can get it squared up, but it'll have to have a wider field of view, unfortunately. All right, next up we have price. And I think prices are pretty comparable. They can be. Like, you can get an R6 Mark II with a decent lens for a comparable cost to an XH2 Fuji device with a comparable lens, and start there. So price doesn't have to be a distinguishing factor. Canon lenses and Fuji lenses are both really expensive, and it used to be that the problem with Fuji was you were stuck with the Fuji lenses. They didn't have third-party cheaper lenses like the Sigmas or the Viltroxes. None of that really matters now. You can pretty much get into either system with the budget you have. So I'd almost say price is a non-factor, unless you're talking high-end, because once you get to the best that Fuji X can provide, and you compare that to the best that Canon can provide at the R level, I mean, it's way more expensive, EOS R, way more expensive. So, in some ways, I might recommend to you to go to Canon DSLR rather than Canon EOS R, the mirrorless. Go to DSLR land, because there's so much good stuff out there, so much cheaper now that Canon is gone mirrorless, all in on mirrorless rather than the DSLR stuff. That's not as fun to shoot with for a newer photographer though, for lots of reasons I won't get into here. So anyway, that's not the purpose of this video. But that's all to say that if you want the highest end Canon stuff, you're gonna be shelling out some major dollars. Same with Fuji. We talked about upgrade path. Once you bump up to that upper end of Fuji X, you're gonna have to sell it all and fork out the major dollars to get to the GFX stuff, which is really expensive. And I would say certainly not worth it unless you are gonna be a high-end, you know, professional portrait photographer or something else, landscape photographer, or you just have a lot of money. But for the rest of us dealing with the current economic issues in the world, who are constrained by money, the great thing is we have a solution, and that's KEH, who is the sponsor of this video, who you can use just like we did to buy the Canon stuff that we have when we switched. We went to KEH to get that stuff used because that's the best way to get into a new system. Hands down, it's what we always do. We always use KEH, so let me tell you a little bit more about them. KEH is a pre-owned camera gear shop that's dedicated to helping photographers improve their craft while also promoting sustainability. For over 4 decades, KEH has been committed to promoting a circular life cycle for pre-owned gear, which not only extends the usefulness of cameras and lenses, but also helps reduce the number of items that end up in landfills. So for those of you looking to dive into Fuji, Canon, or whatever camera brand, KEH is not only a cost-effective option, but it's also an environmentally conscious one. Not only that, but you can be confident your equipment has been thoroughly cleaned, tested, and graded before purchase. Plus, with a free 180-day warranty and a generous 21-day return policy, you can shop with peace of mind. KEH also offers additional product protection in partnership with Extend. Check the link below for a discount off your first order. So thank you KEH for sponsoring this video. Love you guys, so grateful for the support. Man, if it wasn't for KEH, there's no way that I'd be full-time right now. For multiple reasons, not just for sponsoring, but because we can get into this stuff and get the gear we need for cheaper. So thank you, KEH. We have 3 more principles between Fuji and Canon that you're gonna wanna hear. But first, let's look at another photo I got yesterday. That is not what I'm shooting. That is... I like this. There's some shade, but I think it kind of works with the composition. I don't know. I guess I'm not going to know for sure until I see it on the computer, but man, I really like that. It would be hard to get this not in shadow, because unless the sun was really low to the horizon. All right, the next thing is talking more particularly about the interface. There's a huge difference between the philosophy of how you use a Fuji device and how you use the Canon device. And this is a huge thing, and maybe I should have put this sooner into the vlog, but this is, I think this is the most important factor for those of you who do photography the way that I do. And that is that the interface of Canon is focused on remembering internally what your settings are and adjusting those with nameless dials or labelless dials. Meaning there are, for my exposure triangle, ISO, aperture, shutter speed, there are 3 dials. One at the front, one upper front, upper back for ISO, and then the dial for aperture. By default, you can change those when you're shooting in manual, but they're labelless, they're numberless, and it means that they can be remembered. And that's awesome because I have a little, the EOS Mark II, R6 Mark II has a little dial that switches between video and photo mode, and it will remember vice versa. So I can switch back and forth from photo and video very easily. As a hybrid shooter, that's cool, that's awesome. And that's the philosophy of how Canon does things. They're not labeled. And that means ultimate customization. You can customize it however you want. It can be speed, but you have to rely on the muscle memory, right? Some people are very fast at being able to know exactly what to switch, and you kind of have to memorize those locations. Fuji comes at it from an opposite approach. The way they started wasn't that DSLR approach. They started with dials that are labeled, they are numbered, and they're fixed. Now they've gone more, and we'll talk about that in a minute, towards what Canon is doing. But originally, I'm talking about, it was much more like a film camera, where you have an aperture on the ring, up front on the lens. That's the aperture, it's all labeled. You have shutter speed up top, and you have an ISO on top. Often, sometimes with the lower end cameras, ISO will be a button you do push or dial or something, and it's not labeled. But shutter and aperture are almost always labeled. And so what that means philosophically is that the camera isn't remembering your settings in some internal mechanism that can be switched with an endless spinning dial that can be changed. It's meant to be used the way they give it to you. And so that can feel very nostalgic to a photographer. And it can also be really nice to have that mechanical, that tactile feel. It's, I think, very enjoyable. And there's a lot of people that appeals to. The people who look at photography as the experience of going out and shooting is as valuable, is as wonderful an experience as it is the results that you get. Those two things are kind of equal in importance. Then it can be a wonderful thing, and that's something that I loved. I love the X Pro 3 for those reasons. Such a tactile camera, one of my favorites ever. The X100V for sure, so wonderful to use. I just love the way it looks, love the way it feels, love the way you use it as an experience of shooting. It's enjoyable, it's perfect. It's a perfect companion for a vacation. It makes you feel like you're in the moment. It brings mindfulness, it's wonderful. Canon does not give that to me at all. It's simply a tool, and there's a place for that. So if you don't care about any of that, and you want a tool that will never get in your way, but you kind of have to memorize things a lot more and get to the point and practice and get good at using them and know where things are that aren't labeled, kind of have that internal memory of how things work and customize to your heart's content, Canon's going to be more valuable. And that, I see a lot more professionals who couldn't give a crap about the experience of shooting, because that's not what it's about. It's about final product of the photo or the video. That's all that matters. Then you may value Canon more. Having said all that, Fuji has gone more to meet those needs of those people that are either hybrid shooters who need to be able to switch between video and photo without having to worry about moving all those dials. At the X-T4, the X-T5, those both have that ability to switch and then have that memory to kind of overrule or override what those default dials say on them. But they weren't originally built that way, so it does still feel a little awkward. The XH series, though, those were designed to look a lot more like a traditional DSLR. And so you can have your cake and eat it too by having a smaller device, the things that Fuji provides, but still have that DSLR style. To me, I'm biased here, it feels weird. If you want that style, why don't you just go Canon? Then you don't bump up to that ceiling of upgradability. You get that style of shooting, and it's a bigger camera anyway for Fuji. It's not as small as some of the others, so I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of the XH series, but that's just me. You might love it. So anyway, those are some of the factors when it comes to the philosophy of using these devices. Loving these old cars. Just having trouble finding a way to compose them where there aren't fences in the way. So we'll see if I can make it work somehow. I may be trespassing. I hope I'm not, but we'll make this quick either way. So, and not linger so I don't get into trouble. So, relating to the philosophy of shooting with these devices and the usability is the touch screen. This is more of a minor thing. I don't know, it might be major. If you're a landscape photographer, it might be major, and that's using the touch screens. The touch screen on the Canon is way more usable, I'll just say it that way. It kind of lends itself to using it because, going back to what I said before, the philosophy of the Canon device is everything's in memory, nothing has a dedicated dial with a label on it. The touchscreen is a viable way to use it, just as viable as the dials. And so that appeals to a lot of people who grew up on screens. And if you're learning and you used your phone, you've been using your phone for years, and now you're transitioning to a Canon device, it's actually really wonderful to be able to manipulate the exposure triangle using the touchscreen, especially if you're a landscape photographer, because it's all right there. You can set up your tripod, look down on that viewfinder with that screen that you can manipulate however you want. Just tap and move and get everything exposed and set all in one little place. Super easy. And that's when I'm shooting landscape, I actually prefer the Canon. I'm gonna be honest, much more than a Canon and than a Fuji X device. But I just feel like Fuji doesn't, their touchscreen capability is not as good with not having all of those abilities right there. And I don't know, to me the Canon screen just is, it's more dynamic, it's more, it's set up a little bit better, more usable than Fuji. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. Nothing quite says dystopian landscape like an ocean vessel in the middle of the desert. I love this. I just don't know if it'll translate well into a photo. After spending a little time looking at the possible compositions here, I mean, let's be honest, there's not a lot of options unless I want to trespass. But in spending some time looking at this, honestly, I think a vertical shot with tons of sky would be an interesting way to frame it, giving that minimalist look where there's just a little bit of desert on the bottom and then tons of blue sky. It almost gives that, I don't know how to explain that, but it's almost like the blue of the ocean above rather than below the ocean vessel. I think that's how I want to frame it. Tell me what you think though. Or you don't have to tell me what you think. Maybe I'm afraid. I might be afraid of what you think. In that case, you know, just keep it to yourself. And I'll pretend like I'm a world famous photographer, living my own delusions. All right, time to get the shot. All right, you guys, last difference that I'm gonna talk about between Canon and Fuji, and that is the difference of durability. And Canon is better. It's just no question. Canon, it makes a more, what's the word? It's just a more durable device. They're built like tanks, and we've known that for years. Since we shot with the 5D Mark II, which we could drop and have it bounce and work just as well as it did when we first bought it. I still don't know for sure that the R6 Mark II is as durable as those other devices. Some people in the comments have said that it's not when I've claimed that these are durable devices, so we'll see. But I will tell you one thing, and that's all the Canon devices I've used heretofore, the DSLRs, have far outlasted the Fuji devices. Fuji devices are much more fragile. And not just that, but Canon is way more responsive when sending in gear to be replaced, to be fixed. They're just better. They're better at catering to professionals. Fuji is horrible in the States. Now I've heard that other countries, Fuji's, the places are better but they outsource it. That's the problem. Fuji outsources in the States at least to a company, and I know some of these guys, I feel bad saying it because I want them to be good at what they do, but their systems that are in place, their customer service, the time it takes for them to replace things, I've been months without my gear, and that's just inexcusable for a professional. So, man, I just wish Fuji was more durable. As I started doing more and more work in the garage for my other channel, where sparks fly, where things drop, where I've dropped cameras and broken Fuji cameras that are now unusable, because, I mean, it's my own fault, right? I'm a klutz. I'm just hard on my gear. I'd rather have gear that I feel like can take it. If that's not a problem for you, if you baby your gear, then this might not be an issue. If you're never gonna drop it, if you're gonna treat it with a lot more care than I've been able to, then maybe it doesn't matter. But, you know, if you're shooting on the beach like I am today and you're worried about dust, I would personally feel a lot better having a Canon device with me than a Fuji one in general. Yeah, so that's the final thing to consider. And I don't know if I have any other photos to show you from yesterday, but if I do, I'll show them to you right now. And if I'm not showing it to you, then I don't have anything else interesting to show you, and we'll finish the video. So thank you for coming along. I know this has been a longer video. I hope that it's been helpful. I hope you enjoyed that back and forth between me explaining the differences between these systems and which one might be better for you, and the photos that I got yesterday. In summary, man, I mean, it's hard to summarize all of that and say simply like, get this or get that, depending on who you are. I can't summarize it very well. I have shot both systems and been extremely happy for both for different reasons. And so it's not that simple, but I hope that I was able to help you at least make that decision. I'd love to hear in the comments, did I forget anything? What did I forget? Fundamental differences that are very important to keep in mind. I'll try to pin those or bring those up so that you can then also go into the description to see the difference between these systems that I forgot. But man, this video's been too long. Thank you if you've hung out this long. Thank you for watching. If you want to see my videos in the future without interruption, without ads, become a patron. You'll get early access and no interruption for just $5 a month, and whatever else I decide to post that I won't post on the main channel. So thanks for coming along on this journey. Love you guys. We'll talk to you again. Oh, don't forget to do good with your cameras. We'll talk to you again real soon. Bye.